Hi, my name is Antony Brandon.
And my name is William Jeffrey.
And this is From Eyes.
From my eyes to your eyes.
Now, in this episode, this is going to be the first episode called Meet Your Host. Now, in this episode, we're going to be going through exactly how From Eyes started from the very beginning, from ideation to execution.
Absolutely. So with that, we go all into where our passion for cars really started, all the way up to now, where we are planning to buy our own supercars.
Exactly. And along the way, you're going to see exactly how our journey unfolds, our specific journeys unfold, the key lessons that we've learned so far up until this point, the developments that we've made, and what we plan to do in the future. So this is literally going to dive straight into exactly how we started, exactly how we actually met, up until the point where we're bringing From Eyes to you. So tune in and enjoy this episode. Here we are, From Eyes HQ.
Exactly, mate.
How does it feel? A surreal moment, right?
It is, man. I like what we've done here with the logo and stuff. And, with the Lamborghini and all that. And I don't know.
It's finally come to life.
Exactly, man.
Finally come to life.
What started as just a random idea each of us had come up with individually. The fact that it's now
Full blown.
actually happening.
Exactly. Let's recount it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? From
fair.
where it all started. We're super passionate about this, right? And we want to communicate that to the world. We want everyone to understand exactly how we feel about this. So let's start. Let's start with you. How did this is all centered around cars, right? So how did that all start for you?
How did cars all start for me? So from, I'd say my earliest memory of cars would have to be, probably would have been anywhere between 3 and 4 years old. Was
Wow.
My dad, he used to take me out to go drag race. Well, not to go drag racing, but go watch the drag racing. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen that yourself, but we're talking cars which are way too loud. Not healthy for a young child to be listening to without earmuffs, but it was always a bit of a challenge I set myself to, especially when these top fuel dragsters, which I'll show you a video of what they're like later, they do the quarter mile in I think some of them get down the threes now, 400 meters roughly in 3 seconds.
That's crazy.
High threes, I think, but
That is crazy.
but yeah, back then they were doing fours and fives and stuff. But yeah, it all originally started there, and that was just my dad getting me into it. Really, I think he's had a passion for cars for quite a while and things, but he had us kids quite young, so he never really got to explore that till a bit later in life, which we'll get to a bit later. But yeah, he originally started taking my brothers and I along to drag racing, but out of all of us boys, I was always the one who was the most intrigued by it. My other brother, one of my other brothers, the one who's 2 years older than me, he used to get quite into it at that point in time, but since then his hobbies have changed. But yeah, so I'd say it started with drag racing. I did want to get in, participate in that for some odd reason. Sure as heck wouldn't do that now, but at the time I thought that'd be sick. They had these things called junior dragsters, so you could be anywhere between the age of 12 or 8 and 12 or something. You'd get I don't even know what motor they put in it, a little lightweight car that was 400 kilos or something, or if not less, and you'd do a 200 meter drag, and I used to think that was the coolest thing. But from there, I don't know, I just kind of had this random passion for just cars in general. There wasn't a passion for racing, but that came later on. There was actually a point in time where I really, really disliked, really disliked any sort of circuit racing or things like that. I thought it was boring.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I can understand why people do find it boring, but I love it now. To me, it's the most interesting sport out there. But yeah, that all changed when I went along to my first V8 supercar race.
Nice.
So around that point in time, which would have been...
Yeah, how old were you?
Yeah, so that would have been end of 2012, so probably about 14 at the time.
Okay.
So where I lived, they had a V8 supercar race, which was a street circuit. And they no longer do it there, but it was out at Sydney Olympic Park, which is where the 2000 Olympics were.
Yeah.
And they had a street circuit there. I'd heard it for a couple of years, but I never went along to it until this one year my dad just dragged me along. We're like, yeah, let's go see it. I just remember the first time hearing those cars screaming down this like roads which I was used to just driving on myself with my parents and stuff, to then hear a car screaming at 200 kilometers an hour down some of those straights, man. That's one thing which Formula One is missing now, is the sound of the naturally aspirated V8s from the V8 supercars, man. The videos just don't pick it up. When you watch it on TV, all you hear is this whining sound, which is of the transmission.
Yeah.
Because it's got like a sequential gearbox. But man, they sound mental in person. The only thing which I reckon would probably sound better than that is like a NASCAR V8. Those things sound incredible. But yeah, when I saw that race live, and we saw that Friday for practice, Saturday qualifying, Sunday race. But by the time the Sunday race had finished, I went home and I researched how do I become a race car driver? It was the first time in my life I was like, yeah, I'm set on what I want to do as a job.
It's like, that's it.
I want to become a race car driver.
Sick.
And I remember searching like how to become a race car driver. And everything I was reading was like, start go-karting. I was like, oh, okay. What age did each V8 supercar driver that I watched over the weekend, what age did they start?
At 1?
Yeah, bro, it was basically like they just came out of the womb and all of a sudden they were driving a go-kart type of thing. But
they were born with helmets on.
Yeah.
Essentially. Nice.
Oh, jeez. But that's the thing, is they like so many of them had started super young, and by the time they were 14, they had already won either a few go-karting championships and were about to move to the next stage, which at that time was typically Formula Ford.
Yes.
Which we've still got to do an experience for that, man.
Of course. I'm looking forward to that.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, we're going to document that as well.
Exactly. But yeah, so by the time I was 14, here I was saying I want to become a race car driver, in which case kids were typically already halfway through their amateur career trying to work their way up to it. By now, you have someone like Max Verstappen, where he was like 16 years old the first time he drove a Formula One car. Whoa. Maybe younger. And I think he was 16 when he raced a Formula One car.
Wow.
I could be wrong with that, but we'll check that afterwards.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So, and I think he started go-karting at like 2 or 3 or something. So,
jeez.
Here I was, young 14-year-old William, excited about the career he was about to go on, only to then have it shot down very quickly to go,
oh, damn.
Wow, I needed to start this 10 years ago. And on top of that, I need a financial backing that is ridiculous. Because there was this one article I came across, which is Lewis Hamilton, and he says something about how he'd done the calculations of how much it cost him from the point he started go-karting up until his first time driving in Formula One, and it popped out some ridiculous figure, like around, it was somewhere between like $30 and $50 million. Keep in mind, that's not his own money per se.
Yeah, it's like,
but that could be like
of sponsors.
Yeah, sponsor money and those type of things. And I'm not sure if it was in that article or whether there was another driver had actually said, like, if money wasn't a thing, the entire Formula One grid would be completely different. The amount of talent that gets lost somewhere down the ranks, which gets lost somewhere down the ranks because of the fact that they don't have financial backing. When I heard that then changed my mindset. I then went, well, here I am, young kid. I can't do it myself at the moment because, one, the financial backing was honestly the main thing. Two, the age thing. Because worst comes to worst, I could have still got into, let's say I had the financial backing, I probably still could have got into something like Formula One if I really pushed myself, I guess. And if I was good enough at the time, could have done that. Because you have someone like Mark Webber, I think he started, and he was an ex-Australian Formula One driver. And he started go-karting, I think, at 12 or 14. He had a pretty successful career, got robbed a few times of some wins. Unfortunately, never won a championship. But yeah, that's where that all kicked off. And so going from someone who had decided, I can't do this for myself right now, but I think that's the start of where a small goal of mine, which I still have to this day, which I still want to fulfill later on, that's where the initial goal of, at one point in time, I want to either support one particular person to be able to get to a point where they can race a career, do racing as a career, whether that's let me reword that. So I want to support someone who has the dream to be a race car driver. I want to support them from the point of go-karting all the way up till the first time they actually become proper race car driver, whether that be in like V8 Supercars or Formula One or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
No matter what their socioeconomic background is. And I don't know, maybe that I do that. It may be that I set up some sort of driving school or something that that I don't know, whoever wins the challenge or something gets to get sponsored, and we help them through help them through their career. But
Nice.
that's where that all kicked off. So that's a goal that I've still got back of mind that I'll do one day. But a second thing I had was, well, if I'm not going to become a Formula One driver, if I'm not going to become a V8 supercar driver, how else can I then start racing myself? With the issue still being that it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
So that kind of started that initial bug in me that went, well, the only other way is to become wealthy yourself
Yes.
and pay for yourself to do it.
Exactly.
And where I'm different now, previously I said I still want to get into racing. I think if I do that I'll lose touch of the part that makes it fun. Because when you're starting to chase 10 tenths and things like that,
it gets competitive.
It gets competitive. Whereas when you and I go-kart racing,
So much fun.
well, not go-kart racing, but go out to like the high go-karts and things, it's competition whilst you're on track, but you get off and you have a laugh, which is the best part.
Yeah.
There's, like, to me, I've always viewed that when the day comes where I can go do track days in the type of cars I want to do it in, that I'm not just going to be doing it by myself. Like I want to have my mates there. I want to be able to book out a track, even if I've got mates at the time who aren't in a fortunate position themselves to pay to go on track. I want to be able to pay for the whole track and hire out a few cars, bring my own cars, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Let them say, here you go borrow it, go have a rip around the track. If you crash it, whatever, we'll shrug our shoulders, buy another one, type of thing.
Nice.
That's the thing, is like, I think a lot of people do have a goal where they're just like, hey, I want to become a billionaire, just because they think money is everything. For me, money isn't everything. For me, money is just that. It's that gateway to just getting to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whenever you want.
Exactly. It's a tool, you know?
Yeah, it's a tool. Yeah,
Exactly.
like you've described it very well in different points in time. I'm just trying to think. So after that V8 supercar race that occurred, I tried to keep up with like different racing categories, because at that point in time I was like, hey, like I actually want to follow some of these kids to see what they like, the different racing careers that they've paths that they take.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people who are in Formula One now, I remember watching them when they were in like Formula 4 categories or like really small categories and stuff, and now here they are, what's that now, like 6-7 years on, now all of a sudden in Formula One. So it shows that there's definitely room for me to fulfill my goal there of helping someone get to that, like help them to get to their goal of becoming a race car driver. But I'm trying to think. So followed Formula One, got really into that, and I'm still into that. I'm not so much into V8 supercars now.
Yeah.
I know it's to me, I enjoy watching in person, but other than that, it kind of has lost its touch to me. I think I like the prestige of Formula One a bit more.
Yes.
I find
it carries a lot of that.
Yeah, I find it far more exciting. But plus the circuits which they race on is far better than anything we have in Australia. Our Formula One track is a road that gets converted to a Formula One track, and that's the only FIA
Approved,
FIA being the governing body of motorsport is, I guess, the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
That's our only Grade 1 track in all of Australia.
Wow.
That's why you go to something like Eastern Creek, like it's a nice track, but it doesn't look as good as a Formula One track does.
That's true, yeah.
So it'd be cool to build something like that. There's a new track which has been built down in South Australia, but even that, it's not Grade 1. It's like, someone needs to do it.
Exactly.
Someone.
It's begging to
Exactly.
to be done.
Exactly. So if I was following Formula One for a while, still follow that now. And then I don't know, there was a particular point in time where I had a very big passion for JDM cars. It was around this time where I was like, I had this mindset of, like, it would be cool to have money one day, but I didn't truly believe it was something I could do or have.
And where was that?
I just think it's a lot of just it's awareness, I guess, of the world is when you're locked in your own cocoon a bit too much, like I think most people really are, and at a young age, is just whoever you're hanging around, just kind of stuck in that cocoon. And it really takes someone who has either got it themselves and is wanting to help other people.
Yes. Or
it just takes, like, even myself, like I went to different private schools and things like that, and there was wealth around, but how to get wealthy, like those type of conversations never really came up, especially at a young age.
Yeah.
But I was just very fortunate that I had a friend of mine who, he himself was always intrigued with it. His family was pretty well off and things, but even with that, he always had this underlying fire in him that he wanted to also not just become successful, he wanted to outdo anyone, like what anyone else in his family had already done.
Wow, nice.
And so from there, from there, like him and I were chatting in 2017, and he just told me about this documentary, which I don't think you've watched yet, but it'll be The Secret.
Ah, no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. How I describe it is it's the perfect entry level video, or perfect entry level video on what law of attraction is. Mm-hmm. But if you just watch that and never watch anything else again, your perception on how to use law of attraction, at least for me and a lot of other people I know who watched it, it's almost damaging if you just watch it and that's it. Reason being is because to make it a bit more of a sellable video, they just kind of make it seem very blasé, like, oh, you think of the thing you want and it exists. And then it comes into existence, which isn't the case.
No, there's way more to it.
Exactly. If I had to simplify it now, it would be to not just visualize it, but pretty much everything you do would need to be actions towards that goal.
Yes.
It's like you can sit there and go, I want a Lamborghini, but I think you used this analogy once.
Exactly.
Analogy where you're like, there's a Corolla sitting here, and there's a Lamborghini. You're saying you want the Lamborghini, but are your actions pushing you closer? Are you doing Lamborghini type of actions, or are you doing Corolla type of actions?
Exactly.
I'm butchering it, aren't I?
No, you're spot on. Spot on. But it's all action based. Right?
Exactly. And so I'd say the most simple way of putting it is it's actions and visualizations. But those actions need to
match.
Like they need to coexist together.
Yes.
I just want to ask a side question. Like, do you agree with that, or is your perceptions?
No, honestly, I agree fully with that. 100% agree with that, and that's why like that analogy is very, very close to me, because it's the same. I mean, it trickles down to what Formaz is all about, right? Even before we even like dissect it and break it down for the listeners and stuff, it's essentially true where your actions, right, need to match, with whatever you're striving towards, achieving. So it's spot on. I truly believe in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it goes hand in hand, especially with, proper visualization, of goals.
Exactly.
So tracking back to, so you're into JDMs now. So let's get back to that. So you're in JDMs and you're thinking, you sort of have this limiting belief, is it?
Oh, yeah. So had this limiting belief of, and I think this is what, not all, but most of the JDM community, because a lot of them are younger kids. And when I say young kids, like I'm saying anyone between the ages of like 15 up until people around my age, 20, 22, 23. Like I'm saying the ones who didn't grow up with the GTR being like, if they were 15 at the time the GTR, like Nissan GTR came out, or I'm trying to think what other cars were popular, like I don't know, Honda NSX or things like that.
Yes.
A lot of these people, including myself at the time, they had this mentality where it was like, rather than going and actually working hard and getting a supercar, it was go spend 50 grand or something on an Nissan GTR, do a bit of turbo work and engine work, get 1,000 horsepower out of it, and all of a sudden you're quicker than a Lamborghini. Quicker than a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
And I think that all actually, come to think, I'm only realizing this now, I think that all stems from Fast and Furious 1, that scene where Brian and Brian and Dom pull up. It's like what's a retail of one of those, more than you can afford, pal, Ferrari type of thing. That's where it started, that rivalry between the two. But
the exotics and the JDMs.
Yeah, exotics and the JDMs. And I still like the cars themselves. Honestly, it's the current culture at the moment around it that I don't like, which is that it's this whole thing of I've got a GTR, so if you've got a WRX, I'm better than you. Or if I've got a WRX and you've got an Evo, we don't like each other type of thing. And that's just what I found. I went to a lot of car meets in 2017, and man, that's the whole reason I stepped away from that community. I just found it was very competitive, whereas there has this whole stigma around people with supercars that they're these snobby people who aren't polite and things. Don't get me wrong, I've met some people who are like that.
Yes.
But for the most part, I found them the most inviting people I've ever come across.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who truly do it for the love of cars.
Yeah.
And that's where it stems back to that limiting belief of, I was sitting there going, oh yeah, I'm just going to buy this $50,000 car, build it up, and all of a sudden I'm quicker than a Ferrari. But the reality is, if you park a Ferrari and a Supra on the street, not saying in 2020, like before the whole, like, they're now considered supercar status type of thing now.
Yes.
But if we take it back to, when was this? Roughly around 2015, 2016. Take it back then. You put those cars on the street, more people are going to be crowding around the supercar than they are around the JDM car.
100%.
And so I think a lot of people have built this stigma up that the JDM cars are better than a supercar, and they carry this arrogant attitude in a way.
They try to push that ideal.
And it's all, and why it irritates me is it's this whole like tall poppy syndrome thing of I've got this car that I paid quarter the price you did. It's quicker than you, so I'm better than you. It's like, whereas this guy in the Ferrari, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care that you've just beat him at a set of lights. He's beating you in every other like part of life. He's happier than you. He's happier than you. He's more fulfilled. He's serving other people in terms of
most probably, yeah.
Yeah, like not in every application per se. Like there are unhappy people. I more just mean as a whole, at least the ones I've met as a whole are happier and far more inviting. So that whole culture of that community and things is why I personally stepped away from it. But around that time was when I was introduced to the law of attraction. And so I just sat down, I was like, hey, if I can have whatever I want then, what do I truly want?
So no more settling.
Yeah, no more settling. That's precisely it, man.
You
more.
found that you were settling when you're looking at the JDMs.
Oh, yeah.
50,000, that's where I belong.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's it. That's precisely it. They sit there. Deep down, they want that Lamborghini. Deep down, they want that Ferrari. They didn't. Most people I know as a kid, they didn't have a picture of a Supra on their wall. Most
That's
didn't.
a very good
They had a Lamborghini. They had a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Because
or a Porsche.
Or a Porsche. Like they're a work of art.
Yes.
And that's what they had on their wall. Yet they grow up and then go, oh yeah, well I just want a GTR.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, there are ones where that really is their dream car.
Yes.
But I also think there's a large majority who subconsciously isn't aware that the only reason that's their dream car is because they limited themselves and said, I deep down don't truly believe I can have one of these cars.
That's very true.
And that's, like, I remember having a conversation with someone from school who during that time, like through his father and things, actually was into that community quite heavily and like the supercar community, and still is. And I remember saying to him at the time that I don't ignore that, something going on next door. But I didn't think that, like, I didn't like supercars at all at the time. I was so embedded in this thing that supercars suck and $50,000 GTR or Supra is better, that I, at the time, had this genuine belief that supercars sucked and I didn't like them. And then once the veil was pulled off and I realized I could have whatever I want, if I truly worked hard for it and I truly believed I could have it, it could exist.
Yeah.
And so, like, it would become reality.
Exactly.
And so I, at that point, asked myself, well, what do I actually want? And around that same time was when I was heavily into Formula One. And although in Formula One they haven't been the best, haven't had the best performance being McLaren.
Yeah.
What they were doing in their road cars every other competitor in the supercar community wasn't even coming close to them. Like Porsche in terms of track performance is probably the closest even now. But you take a McLaren on track and is decimating all of the competition.
Oh yeah.
And people will sit there and go, oh well, how about the Pista, which I know you like, and we'll say, how about this?
That's really special to me.
But then my counter to that is, do you not realize that a lot of those cars were only built by those companies out of reaction to what McLaren was doing?
Ooh,
McLaren's an early, is a young company in terms of like the road production cars. Sure, they had the F1, the McLaren F1 back in, I think, the 90s or whenever it was.
Yeah.
It was the 90s, but they only started producing their modern day version starting with the MP4 12C in 2011. And since then, they've been rolling out cars consistently. And each car, they just push to the next level,
the boundaries,
and destroy everything. And don't quote me on this, but from my understanding is that they don't sit there and try and go for the Nürburgring lap records and things like that. Because they're not designing a car that's going to be quickest on the Nürburgring like every other manufacturer tries to do. They're trying to design a car which is going to be the quickest car on track at every track. That's why you go look at the lap times. Not every McLaren, but at that point in time when that McLaren was built and they took it around the track, it decimated whatever its direct competition was. And that's why, man, like people sit there and go, oh, the GT2 RS, it's quicker than the 720S, but that's not the direct competitor.
Yes.
The direct competitor is the GT2 RS versus the 765 LT. And we all know which one's much, much quicker.
Oh, 100%.
So
100%.
yeah, basically once that veil was lifted and I got to a level where I truly believed I could have whatever car I wanted, I realized very quickly I wanted that car I dreamed about that was sat on my wall.
Nice.
I actually remember now, I'd completely forgotten about this. I remember as a kid having a Wheels magazine, which was similar to like something like this, yeah. And in the back of them, they used to always have like all the different car brands and then each of their models and their price. And even though we didn't have them in Australia at that point in time, I don't believe, I remember the same car I always went to was the Pagani. Is it pronounced Pagani?
Pagani.
Why am I saying Pagani? I used to say that as a kid, but I used to say Pagani. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. It's Pagani. Pagani Zonda.
Ooh.
And I used to, so with the Pagani Zonda, I used to always go to that car, and was that moment I went, ooh, that's a car I want when I'm older, like that type of car, like that echelon.
Yes.
And I realized I stopped caring about all the JDM cars. They lost their appeal. I look at them now and they don't do it for me anymore.
Yeah.
I used to think they were the coolest thing in the world, but they've lost their appeal to me because I realized that at the time the only reason why I liked them was because of limiting beliefs. Yeah. And that's just where I differ from it now. So
nice.
Where I am now, dream car, ultimate dream car, Ferrari F40. That's going to happen. Yes. I don't know when, but 100%. That'll happen.
I want one of those as well.
But in terms of first proper supercar, it's going to be the McLaren 720S. When that one came out, I actually disliked it when I first saw it. I thought it looked ugly. I was more into the 675 LT, which I still think is
gorgeous.
Still think is gorgeous. That's easily like the second most pretty McLaren that's come out, I think. But 720S, I didn't like it at first, and I saw it in person and was gobsmacked. That thing is gorgeous, as you know. Well, we rode in one very recently.
Very recently. Still fresh. I don't think that feeling is going to disappear anytime soon.
Oh, exactly. And that's, I think just that story alone is a prime example of how the law of attraction works. Is it doesn't happen instantly. You don't go, I want a McLaren 720S, and then the next day you're buying one. Yeah. It's a process. It takes time. But from the moment I decided on the McLaren 720S, which was sometime towards the end of 2017, was it 20? Yeah, towards the end of 2017. So I decided I wanted a McLaren, but it wasn't until 2018, that I decided that it was definitely going to be a 720S. And since then, nothing really happened for a year or two. I hadn't even ridden in a McLaren. I would go to the dealership to go sit in the car to know what it feels like, to try and visualize it a bit better. But just this year alone, I got to ride for the first time in a 570S. No, sorry, 570 GT. And already I was like, okay, wow, this is quick, but much quicker than I thought it would be. And then that same person sold that car and they've now got a 720S. And I made a post on my Instagram recently saying, like, one day you'll be mine, talking about this McLaren, which I had sat in, this purple one. And the gentleman who originally took me in the 570 GT, who's now got the 720S, he actually reached out to me and we had a bit of a chat. And he ended up saying to me, he was like, oh, you've got to take it for, like, what did he say? He worded it something on the lines of, you've got to give it a go one day. And I thought he just meant, oh, like one day you go test drive a McLaren 720S. I was like, oh, like I don't think, because I'm this, like how old I am, I don't think with insurance that they're going to allow me to drive it at the dealership. He's like, no, like drive my one. I was like, what? What, from moment of dreaming about having this car and visualizing it to then finally the first hint of moving closer towards it was once you already have it, they can see that desire and that passion and they can relate to it. So they want to help me along my path and want to let me experience it. So they offered for me to drive the 720S to then, last week? Sorry, not last week. Jeez, that was this week.
Yeah, this week.
Jeez, man. This week we, for the first time ever, keep in mind, I haven't still haven't taken that 720S drive offer yet. So I still hadn't, I'd sat in 720Ss, I hadn't actually been driven in one yet. And then where were we Wednesday? We were out at Eastern Creek with Dr. Shamanta, whose interview everyone gets to see in a couple of days' time.
First episode.
Exactly. We finally got to experience what a 720. Sorry, I finally got to experience what a 720S was like, but not just on the road, because you really don't. Those type of cars, I think they're useless on the road now. After Wednesday, I think why would someone at all sit that in the garage, take it out the cars and coffee, and then drive it home, and then
it's a waste.
It's a waste.
So from that experience, it's the most versatile supercar that I've ever experienced. It's it can do that. It can do the cars and coffee very, very nicely and elegantly, but you're missing out on a lot by not taking it out on track.
Precisely.
You're missing out on a lot of things.
But that's the thing is, I fully agree with that. Is that if a supercar, at least nowadays, most of them are designed to be the excellence of performance. And performance is tested on a track, not on a road. So I think there's a fair few people who like their garage queens, but more so than ever, I think that's a waste of car. I sit here and say I want the Ferrari F40.
Yeah.
And when I originally decided I wanted that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep it in the garage. It's a collectible. You best believe I'm taking that on track. I'll get a lot of driver training beforehand because I know that's an absolute...
That's a very raw driving experience.
No driving assist, nothing. But I'm definitely going to be taking that one on track.
I've seen someone that is actually doing that. I think they're based in the UK somewhere. And it's always been their dream car. And I think they almost drive the F40 daily, if I'm not mistaken.
That'd be sick.
I mean, with car guys, I always say this, but you must have some nuts that are, a bit loose. But we would happily do that.
Absolutely.
Just purely for the love of cars and what it is and pure enjoyment,
And that's precisely it. Is you don't buy a supercar because it makes sense.
Yeah.
You buy a supercar because it excites you.
Exactly.
Like, at the end of the day, if people are buying a car because it makes sense, they're going to go buy a Mazda 2 with as many creature comforts as possible and just drive that daily because it's cheap on fuel. You get all the infotainment system. It's comfortable. There's plenty of other things. And the main one, it's cheap.
Yes.
That's what makes sense.
Yeah. Where's the excitement in that?
Yeah, but where's the excitement in that?
Exactly.
You go experience what a 720S is like around a track, and I guarantee you'll come out of that, whether you like cars or not. Guarantee you'll come out of that, if you've even got a hint of enjoying adrenaline, you'll want to go buy one.
Yeah.
And then from eyes, that's where we come in, is we go, hey, well, you now have this desire for the car, come watch our videos and find out how it's possible for you.
from actual owners.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly.
So it's all about the journey. I mean, you've properly tracked down, and this is what this is all about. Especially getting to know you and understanding, and other people getting to understand what is the core of this passion that we've packaged it and we've named it for Mars. And we tracked down to when the seed was first planted, the races. Like, excellent dad to put you in the midst of this this activity. And then you've developed into, seeing the JDM cars and then noticing, which is a very key point, noticing that you're settling. You're almost like you deserve better, because I always think that if the thought has come to your mind, right, then you have all the power within you to actually realize that into the real world, to actually manifest that into your real world. Now, you've gone and done that. And then now, through visualization, the law of attraction, the universe is just pushing you towards experiencing that, fully for yourself, from getting it offered to drive it to actually experiencing it on track, very, very high speeds, right?
Yeah.
And then soon to actually own it.
Exactly. And where I love that more, the part that really, really excites me now is the part where I get to share that experience with other people. Because this is what irritated me a bit about the JDM scene and where it differs. With the JDM scene and a lot of those guys, it's rock up to the car meet, keep to yourself, don't talk to anyone, and mainly just because they all feel a bit awkward and stuff, but they just don't communicate with everyone. There's not much interaction unless people already know each other or they themselves are outgoing. But as a majority, I guarantee if you right now, if you went along to one of those meets and you didn't say a word to anyone, I almost guarantee that not a single person will come up to you and speak to you.
Wow.
Whereas we were at that event on Wednesday, and how many people approached us?
Wow, a lot.
And there weren't even that many people there.
Yeah. Many people, I was actually genuinely surprised.
And that's what I mean is the difference is one side just has a car because they want to flex it and be like, hey, I'm cool. I've got a JDM car that everyone dreams about, settles for, I'd more so say. Whereas you get the other side with the people with the really high-end cars, they just want to share the experience with people. Not everyone. Keep in mind, with everything I'm saying here, it's not a blanket rule for everyone. So if there's anyone listening here who's sitting there going, well, I don't agree with that, that's not me. I'm just saying on a general sense, this is my perception from my eyes to your eyes. This is my perception of what I've witnessed with these different communities.
Exactly, yeah.
And so what excites me the most about supercar ownership isn't just me taking the track and doing that. It's driving down the street and seeing that excited kid, seeing the car and then being too nervous to come and say hi. And I'd be like, hey, do you actually want to have a seat in the car?
Yeah.
They then have their parents get all excited, take photos of little Jimmy in the car, little Jessica in the car, whoever it may be.
Yeah.
And that kid remembers that as they grow older. They see that
Absolutely.
photo, plants a seed in their mind of, I want to own one of these cars when I'm older.
Yeah.
I don't think as a kid I ever sat in a Supra and went, oh, I want this to be a dream. I want this to be my car, like a car that I dream of when I'm older. But I definitely remember those times. There was a random gentleman or lady who had some sort of supercar that was at the local cafe, and I'd be nervous, go say hi and jump in the car and experience. And that's what I mean is there's a lot of people where they dream of that car and then they settle.
Yes.
So I just want to help people get to a point where they truly believe they can own it themselves and go to a point where they own it. You and I, we don't own these cars yet.
Yeah, but we're on the journey towards our own ownership.
And that's why we say we're here to bridge the gap between the exotic car owners and the aspiring owners, because at the moment we went from just purely being an aspiring owner to then being a couple steps ahead where we're now on our journey to becoming an owner.
Yeah.
And we're not just saying it, it's like we truly believe it. There's not a single part of me that doesn't think that somewhere along the next whatever amount of years that I'm not going to own one of these cars. And not a single part of me doesn't think not a single part of me thinks that is not going to occur. I know it's going to occur, I just don't know exactly when.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I'm just excited to share that experience with people.
Nice.
More so, share it with yourself, man, because it'll be
Exactly.
sick to get you out on track.
Yeah, 100%.
You've done some go-karting, but we haven't done any proper,
Basically, track
proper
runs,
track
yeah.
time, because, man, it's same, but also very
different.
As you experience, man, like,
That's insane. Honestly, I really want to unlock that, that side of, so like my passion for cars, like if we had to track back, so we've covered, we understand now exactly where the seed was planted and how that developed up until now. But the main, like, I really want the viewers to really understand like how we actually met. Right? How we actually got to this point, because a lot of things happened, and a lot of things happened before for Mars, and a lot of things happened before, us sitting here. So how we actually met. This is an interesting one, because if I hadn't taken a flight to Canberra, I don't think this would be happening. All right? Just, close friend.
yeah,
We're like, birthday party. I rarely went to birthday parties, but this one, the friend is really, really close to us. So I was like, it's a must that I need to go. And then I met you there. And it was a conversation. The same passion that you've literally expressed right now is the same passion that I felt through the conversation. And it was mostly, through the love of cars. So how did you feel, like, the first meeting and all that?
I'd already been given a bit of a hint that there was this guy who had a similar online mentor or not similar, the same online mentor as myself, and like I just kind of got this hint that I was going to meet this person, but I had no idea who it was or anything like that. That's pretty much as I've been told by our mutual friend.
Yeah.
And I, like, you and I separately trekked it down to Canberra, which was probably, like, at least for me, a 3-hour drive, for you probably hour flight or half-hour flight or whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I went to that party, because at that point in time I was overdoing parties and things like that. The only reason I went is because our mutual friend, the level of compassion he had showed me throughout my, like, towards the end of leaving, or when I left school and all that period and things, the level of compassion he showed me, I just decided whenever this guy needs a favor, or whenever it's his birthday, whatever it may be, whatever makes him feel special and happy, I'm going to make sure I'm going to go above and beyond to make sure that I'm there to deliver on that. So if that's going to parties for him, absolutely, there's no doubt I'd always do that. And so, like, decided to go along to this party, trekked all the way down there, and I'm not sure if we got introduced or whether we just randomly started talking.
Oh, we did get introduced.
Okay, yeah.
So that was, at the center. I remember how there's like house party, how it was all set up.
Yeah.
Kerry pulled our mutual friend, pulled me in, and he was like, "Yo, I want you to meet this person," and you were there with your girlfriend, and I was like, "Hey," like, we kicked it off, and then talked about obviously the mentor that we share. It's almost like one of those things where, if you share a mentor like that, then you're definitely on the same sort of like wavelength in terms of the way you think about life, about wealth, and basically what is possible, what is possible in your own life. So I just felt like that instant connection. If you're following this person and you resonate with what they're saying, then we're kind of like on the same path. So that was kind of like where we were introduced.
Exactly. Because like, I love what you said there, where you're like a mentor like that, because we're not talking about what I would call a mainstream, easily digestible mentor. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy. Like, I love what he puts out, Gary V. But he's the mainstream, commercial, easily digestible, like, mentor in a way.
Yeah.
Whereas this particular gentleman, we're not going to name at this point in time.
He who shall not be named.
He shall not be named. This particular mentor, to follow, like you said, to follow his lessons and to be on the same wavelength as him. Every single person I know who follows this gentleman, they follow a very particular type of mindset.
Yes.
And isn't just like become a millionaire just so I can flex all my cars on people.
No.
It's about serving.
Yes. And
what
empowerment.
I mean, like serving and empowerment. And by serving we don't mean just being a slave to someone per se. It's more about providing value to as many people as possible. The money, if you're providing value to millions of people, the money's naturally going to come.
Exactly. It's a byproduct. You know?
Exactly. And that's the thing is, when I first heard about the law of attraction, I'd set myself some monetary goals. Like, I want to be worth this amount. I haven't thought about that goal since I first wrote it down because I really don't care about it. It's got nothing to do with the money. It's all to do with, well, nothing to do with the money. You're going to need the money to do all these things, but it's 100% about what experiences I can have for myself, what I can share with people because of that money.
Yeah.
So that's why when I think of the goals, I don't think of $50 million or something. I sit there and I visualize the car. I visualize being on track. I visualize being on track with my mates in the car behind me or in front of me or wherever it may be.
Yeah.
That's what I visualize. And so, to follow someone like this mentor of ours, I fully agree that it pays back. So it goes back to, it definitely goes back to being on the same wavelength. So we spoke that day, we grabbed each other's socials, and around that same time, I started to distance myself from another group of people I was friends with just because I realized I was settling at the time. So these aren't people I resonate with. They're not people who are striving to become anything special in a way. And what I mean by that is they weren't wanting to spread a positive message to a whole lot of people. They weren't wanting to serve people, as we keep repeating. And so start to distance myself from them. And naturally, when you create a void in your life, it's going to be filled with something else.
Yes.
And so, with that, after meeting you, I remember saying to myself, I was like, someone like Antony, or more specifically Antony, I want to be friends with that guy. I want him in my circle. So I remember reading a quote somewhere that you're a makeup of the 5 closest people to you. Absolutely. So I started being very specific about who those 5 people were.
Nice.
And something I'll say to anyone who's actually listening to this right now is, if you resonate with anything we've said so far and you're sitting there going, but none of my friends are into this type of mindset, or none of them actually get it, and you feel a bit alone, believe me, there is a period where you will be alone. You have to get comfortable with that. You have to truly come to love that. And the funny thing is, the moment you get comfortable with that is when you can properly start focusing and visualizing on bringing quality people to your life who you resonate with, and you'll see they'll start to roll in. Those 5 people that you cut out that are useless or whatever, or however you want to describe them, who you just got rid of, they will slowly be filled up with more quality people like Antony. And the thing is, every other, no worries, but every other person that, at that time, our mutual friend, he was someone where we spoke a little bit after school, but I purposely started to become more friends with, closer friends with him, because I realized he was on a similar wavelength. He wanted to be that successful person who helped people and provided value and blah, 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 blah. And so I wasn't too surprised when I met yourself and you were similar with that mindset and things. And I remember just telling myself I wanted to build up to a point where the 5 closest people to me are people who are striving for something more. And what do you think? All 5 of those closest people, all 5 of them now in 2020 fit that. And 3 years ago they didn't. And that's those incredible. Other people I don't speak to now, it wasn't even like it ended sour or anything like that. It's just,
falls off.
It just falls off. You don't need to, I guess the main thing is you don't ever want to stand there and tell someone, I think you're going nowhere in life. Your aspirations are to work a 9 to 5 and then at 65 retire, live off $100,000 of soup and then die.
Wow, yeah.
It's, you wouldn't want to say that to someone because that's the reality for a lot of people, and if you say it to someone, you can come across, to put it plainly, like a dick.
100%. But I feel like naturally it's almost like certain things, oil and water don't mix. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Oil and water don't mix. But on the other hand, if you drop, a droplet of water in a glass like this, it's just gonna, it's just gonna become one. So if you're putting together these 5 friends, you're all of the same sort of kind. You know what I mean? And that is gonna stick together. But the others, it just falls off. It just separates naturally.
Yeah.
You don't want to come across like that, as you said. So it just falls off and you move on.
No, absolutely.
Only for the better. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the thing, man. Is worst case scenario, which is something I wouldn't even think would occur, is worst case scenario. If all 5 of those friends at this point in time cease to exist, I have full faith in the fact that it would be replaced by 5 more friends who would be, or 5 more close people to me who would fulfill that same type of role of influencing me to be better, so that eventually I can influence other people to be better as well. And so, yeah, it's something I'm quite content with, and very, very happy that that one friend of mine who I've been friends with for 10 years, that he introduced me to the law of attraction. Because honestly, that documentary which I mentioned earlier, The Secret, man, is like, to anyone who was wanting to get into this initially, I would highly, highly recommend them to just watch that. Watch that and tell me by the end of it that you don't want everything you limited yourself on. Tell me you now don't sit there and think, oh, geez, it's possible. Because you go through it's not possible, it's not for me, to it's possible, to then going, I know it, I'm going to achieve that. And that's where you and I now. And that's where we are bridging the gap between the owners and the aspiring owners. The aspiring owners, if they don't already yet, they will soon go, it's possible.
Yes.
When they've reached a similar level to us now is when they go, it's possible for me and I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Because we're sitting here now, we don't own supercars yet.
Yeah.
But as this carries on, there's going to be a point where we do.
No, 100%. I have zero doubt on that happening.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because essentially we're getting the blueprint, It's kind of like we have access to these owners that are willing to share, and we are aspiring to be those owners that are sharing. But especially the people who have these limiting beliefs, a blueprint really helps. Seeing that it's actually possible, seeing that these are actually normal people like you and I that just found something that they love to do and they completely immersed themselves into it, and they served like many people, right? And eventually a byproduct of that was empowerment in the wealth category, where they were able to, enjoy the stuff that they love.
Exactly.
And express that to the world. So 100%, I have zero doubt in that. And it trickles out. So we met there, we realized we're on the same wavelength. We didn't actually talk for a while.
Yeah.
Right? So it was almost like on and off, like, on the socials, I was posting this, interaction here and there, until you invited me to one of your drive days.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So tell us about that. Like your drive days, how did that come about?
So I'll try and say this quickly, otherwise I'll be on it for an hour.
Yeah.
But I was part of a car community, decided I wanted, a community of people who had the same car as me. And I decided pretty quickly that I wanted to learn how to run events. So I started to run the events, and it hit a point where my dad himself, through his own fruition of his own success, had ended up moving up a level in terms of cars he owned. And so,
What did you get?
Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio.
Ooh.
So
Those are nice.
Excuse the 30-syllable name, but we're talking about a car which, once again, the reason why I love it, it decimated the competition. The M3, the C63.
Yeah.
Great. They have nicer interiors, may sound better, whatever you want to say.
It's Italian.
But you put it on track,
It's
quicker than all of them.
Oh.
Quicker than all of them.
No, it's nice.
But so he got this new car, and I wanted to start inviting him onto the events, but I noticed that people weren't too keen on the idea of me allowing someone with this type of car to come along to the event. And it was, once again, that whole tall poppy syndrome thing.
Oh, yes.
And so from there, I just, there was a few other things that went on, end up just leaving that community, end up deciding just to leave that community, and that it was better that I put my time and energy into something that was 100% my own.
Yes.
And so that's where Squadra Grand Tours started up, or Squadra GT, or SGT started up.
Nice.
So like I said, throughout 2017, I'd gone to all these different events, car events.
Didn't like them.
Just didn't like them. I tried everything from the JDM scene. The only thing I didn't experience during that year was the supercar scene.
Supercar scene, okay.
But I experienced everything from the JDM scene to the ADM scene, KDM scene, whatever it may have been. Everything. Think of it, I tried it. Jeeps, tried it.
Yeah, hot hatches.
Bro, everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so strong on the opinions of what I witnessed, because I didn't just go to one event and go, oh yeah, this.
No,
like
it was
I
a
didn't like this.
pattern.
I went to everything, man,
Yeah.
and it was all the same thing. It was people who just, I don't know. I don't want to go down that story too much, because it will probably start to get a bit too dark. But I'm also just mean that, like, with them, is that it just wasn't. It wasn't about sharing a positive experience with everyone.
Yeah.
It was just about, here's my car, I'm cooler than you because I own a cooler car than
It's
you.
almost like, that competition, almost like, you're trying to be better than everyone else.
Yeah.
You're, very, almost like inflating yourself too much, with the vehicle that you have, looking down on other people. When it's completely missing the point. The point is, we're here for the love of cars, right? We want to potentially, people who are getting into cars, we want to, almost like welcome them with open arms and say, hey, we love this. We love this together. Come and join us, And if you're not feeling that with a car event, then what's the point, right?
That's precisely it.
So I guess that drove you to starting SGT, right?
Yeah.
So Squadra GT started.
Yeah. So Squadra GT started. I started just hosting events as much as I could at the time, and I just invited. Oh, that's the main thing. Is I decided that I didn't like what these, like, a particular car communities were like. So for that reason, I specifically made sure that when someone was to join Squadra GT, that they would fit the ethos of what we were. That we're all along the same mindset. And so for that reason, every single one of the events since I started, I've loved all of them. Because the people, the cars, we all mix, but we're the same. Just like you described. Yes. It's not oil and water.
Yes.
Because there's only been once, which was that Bathurst drive you went on, where oil tried to mix with water.
Ah, yes.
And oil was never invited again.
Exactly.
And oil, even once they were there, they didn't actually try to get involved. It was just like that. They just didn't fit in at all. Whereas like pretty much every other new person who's tried to join has, just like the water analogy, had just mixed in perfectly. And it was seamless. And so that's where I reached a point. I was like, there's this guy Antony. I'm not close friends with him. I do want to introduce him to be part of my personal circle. And I was just trying to think, this guy does trading, he does this, he does that. I don't do any of that. Like, hopefully there's something we connect on. And I'm not sure if it's because we'd spoken about it previously, or I saw your stories.
Yeah.
But I remember reaching out to you, being like, hey, I've got this event coming up. And I was like, hoping you'd come along. And this wasn't the Bathurst one, this was that Putty Road one.
Putty Road, yeah.
Yeah, and invited you along there. And at the time, I didn't even have a car myself.
We were on a borrowed car though.
Yeah, so we were borrowing one of my brother's cars, and I tried to drive that for the first 5 minutes, and the brakes got warped, and I just ended up pulling over and jumping in the car with someone else. But when you came along, we were chatting all the way to all the way to the start location.
The meetup,
But it was that first, I'd say, probably the first 15 minutes of the drive, was it?
Yeah, first 15 minutes, yeah. Oh, yeah, it was literally like right here,
Yeah, so first 5-10 minutes of the drive,
we
started speaking about something, and do we want to bring this up now, or should we bring it up later?
What about what we're speaking about? Well, I can bring it up now. So we started off, obviously this was the first time where we were together for a prolonged period of time, and we could start, sharing a lot, And I have a feeling, I started asking more about, what you were getting on, what you were doing. You had a keen interest on what I was doing, which we're gonna get into, later on in this episode. But essentially, like, I was very curious. I was very curious as to what you were getting up to, and insights on what I could potentially sort of like input into your life and go from there. So we got to the event, and I remember you handled the event beautifully.
Thank you.
Right, this was coming from, I was running seminars around Australia and stuff, so I knew how a great presentation should go. You know what I mean? And this was properly done. You had the group of people well controlled. You were almost like attracting the same kind, right? So everyone there was very civilized, and they were there for the love of cars, and they really wanted to share that. And I just thought the event was run beautifully, and it was my first car event. I know enough about cars to call myself maybe a petrol head, but obviously you know way more, right? So it's almost like we're bouncing off each other. So first car event, I was always very, very, it was always a very daunting experience to go into a car event, because I'm like, oh, people are gonna be very snobby. If they know more about the cars and all that stuff, they're gonna be talking like stuff to do with the engines, which I have no idea.
Which is precisely the experience I got from all those other meets I went to in
Exactly.
2017.
So this was an event where, one, I knew someone, right? I had a friend that is actually running the event, so I just felt instantly welcomed. You know what I mean? And you ran it beautifully. Now fast forward, obviously you enjoyed the spirited driving, obviously within the speed limits, right? But
Always.
exactly, always. So after the drive day, this is where the real meat of the basically the story comes in, where it was after the drive day. I was telling you this, and then I was asking how whether you're monetizing it already. You get what I mean? Because for me, when I break it down, like from my roots, right? When we get into that, you notice that I'm very, very much business minded, right? So everything is about adding value and also maximizing returns, right? So I was like, bro, these events are run so beautifully. You must be monetizing this in some way. I remember you said that no, you're thinking of it, but you haven't actually done it. So we started giving ideas on Squadron GT. It's all about this exploring the Australian sort of like landscape, and almost like a tourism sort of thing, but with cars involved. Exploring Australia for the love of cars. And I was like, okay, we can monetize it like this and that, right? And I was giving you all these ideas, but I think from there it didn't really actually go anywhere, right? We had the conversation, and that was that, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then that later developed. I mean, we had that conversation. We knew that we clicked straight away, right? Because you're on this path to reform your circle, right? Make your circle much tighter and much more purpose-driven. And I think where it really hit was the second drive day. The second drive day. So that happened. We had a chat about it. It all basically sank and it sat somewhere. But the second drive day is where things changed, and that was the Bathurst one.
Yeah.
Right. And that was within the first what? I remember we went to your place to obviously pick up your dad and stuff, and start on our way. It was throughout that drive within your suburb that the conversation started, where I told you that I started this thing. Right. I was excited about it. I was like, he's gonna love this because it's car related.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, yo, Will, you need to hear this. Right. And I think this was September, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, September. Because I remember this happened September
2019. Yeah.
2019. Yes, September 2019. I was like, Will, this is it. So I was living in the Benelong apartments, and one thing about that place is the basement is full of some really, really nice supercars. Right?
Benelong. Oh yeah, like
Yes,
next to the opera house.
Yes, next to the opera house. So that had, I was very fortunate that my family and I were living there, and the garage is full of these cars, and I was like, wow, there must be a way that I can ask these owners, like, what do you do, what do you guys and girls do to get into the driver's seat of these cars? So I started that, right? And I mean, this is kind of like fast forwarding because you don't know actually where the passion initially started for myself. But essentially, I got to hear so many different stories about people who are doing very different things, but they would end up in the same car. Like, for example, someone would go buy a Lamborghini Performante, someone else would go and buy the same Performante, but the stories would be very, very different, right? Very, very different. So I thought about this. I was like, wow, I'm getting all this wisdom from all these guys with all these supercars that I want to own, eventually in my lifetime. And they all incorporate different perspectives, right? What if there was a way that I could build a brand that captures that, it expresses that to other people? Because without that, it would be extremely selfish. Because I know the young me would have loved to hear those insights, to hear, this is how I found myself, this is how I knew that, I deserved better, and this is how I knew who to serve and how to serve them, right? And this is how I rewarded myself, and this is my passion. You get what I mean? So I knew that there must be a way to share this. So I sat down. I remember my brother was there as well, and I started drawing. These random logos, right, on my whiteboard. I had sticky, those sheets of paper for the board. I stuck them around my room, and I was just designing stuff. And I realized much later on that I loved building brands. So I loved designing brands and almost like parking them for later, to let them materialize into bigger brands once I've found the right people to build with. Now, when I designed this thing, it quickly came to me where all these people would look at the same car, but would tell a different story. So I thought that these stories need to be told, from their eyes to other people's, right? So that's why I was like, from my eyes to yours, and immediately coined From Eyes.
Yeah.
Right? So coined From Eyes, and I was like, you know what? My unique selling point would be, I'd be taking cool pictures of these cars, right? Also from my eyes, because how I'd take one photo would be very different to how someone else would take a photo, right? And I wasn't very experienced in car photography. So I was like, hey guys, this is from my eyes to yours. Yeah. So don't judge me. That's essentially how it started, right? So then I was like, you know what? I take the pictures of the car, I give them to the owner for free, just so that I can hear the story, right? That's where I found the most value, because the way I looked at supercars was I would see the car, but I would immediately think of what it took to get to that car, right? I would immediately think the struggles, the trials and tribulations that went behind the scenes for that to be able to happen, right? So that's how From Eyes started. So I remember I was super excited. I told you about this. And I was like, yo, we need to interview car owners and we need to create a book, right, of 100 supercar owners, all in categories. So we've got your daily drivers, right? You've got your grand tourers, you've got your track weapons, you've got your weekend warriors, the whole lot, right? I was like, we need to have a book of 100 supercar owners, or exotic car owners, rather, right? And I remember you froze, and you were driving, right? And you froze, and you had goosebumps all over. And you were like, you will not believe this, right? And at that point, like, what was going through your mind when I was telling you this?
Man, geez, I'm even getting the goosebumps now. It was law of attraction when it works.
Yeah.
Because one, you get these goosebumps.
Yeah.
Two, it's not just like normal goosebumps, like, oh, I'm a bit cold. Like, it is a full body. To me, it starts at the neck. Yeah. And you feel like an explosion of the goosebumps all the way up to your head, all the way down to your toes type of thing.
Yeah.
And I just had this moment of, like, this is it. I've had this idea for 2 years now. No, sorry, at that point in time, a year now.
Yeah.
And finally, there's someone else who shares it. Whoa. Like, at the time, I was just in complete disbelief. But then immediately, I was just like, whoa. Internally, I was like, well, how can we do this? But it was just, for myself, I don't know, it was just a moment of relief and just pure excitement of, wow.
Yeah, because you told me immediately that you're like, you will not believe this. I came up with the same exact idea in 2018.
Yeah.
I mean, purely from the relationship that we had built up until that point, I instantly believed you. But you actually pulled up a Google Doc.
Yeah.
And you showed me all the points that you had written down. And you're like, okay, we're going to call it what, Supercars of Australia? Was it?
So Supercars of Australia. And I even showed you the timestamp of when the document was originally created and things. But yeah, I call it Supercars of Australia. And I forgot exactly how I worded it, but one of the first sentences that said what we did or what we would do would be, pretty much sitting down with supercar owners and finding out what they did to get to the point of ownership.
Yes.
And the whole point was to bridge that gap between myself at the time, where I was like, I really want this car, but I don't know how to get there. Like, you get some people who, like, you get a lot of old school mindset of go to school, get A's, go get a degree of some sort, become a lawyer, all of a sudden you own a supercar. Whereas what I know now, from my eyes and just in general of speaking to people, between the point of the idea, writing it down, parking it, and now, is that you can pretty much do whatever the heck you want, as long as you push yourself to a point where you're serving as many people as possible.
Yes.
And it is really a passion of yours. You'll want to enjoy it to make a decent amount of money, which the money, like I said, money doesn't matter. It's the fact that from there, with the money, you get to go do whatever you want with it.
Exactly. No, 100%.
In this case, buy supercars.
Exactly. Now, that was a point of realization where I was like, you know what, we the fact that we both had the same idea, right? And we both kind of, I mean, I was in the early stages of parking it, because remember, I designed. So I've built a couple of brands, right? But I've got also a couple of brands that I've built, designed everything. The same case with Formais. Literally came up with that and parked it, right? Purely waiting for the right moment, right? And with this one, I was like, okay, there's no point in waiting. This is it, because I don't want us sitting when we're like 70 or something and wishing that, do you remember that idea that we came up with? I wish we did that. Like, that was like, if we got to that point, that would have been devastating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At that point, I knew, purely from the conversation that we had, and you know, trying to find an out, almost like, you know, to live your purpose, and obviously realize your dream to someday, you know, sponsor someone to go through their, you know, their racing career. I knew that this was it. This was one thing that, you know, we would both have 100% input in, right? Express our love for cars, our passion for motorsport, right? And also show other people, just like you and I, right, that are aspiring to be owners, that it's actually possible. How? By actually sharing the stories of these owners from all these different perspectives, right? And remember, it didn't actually start there. So we said this and we were like, okay, cool. Like, this is a cool idea. We both had the same idea, and it actually, nothing materialized from that. Up until you were faced with a couple of options.
Yeah.
Right? So what were those options?
So you want me to, we'll get as specific as I
Exactly,
can, actually. Well, I was at a point in like my current role where I've been here now 18 months. I had a bunch of other job opportunities pop up. One was to become a finance manager for a car dealership. So in my head, I was like, "Ooh, that may be a good idea," because I've always wanted to work with cars.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, well, this is the first idea that's popped up that has something to do with cars." But then I got offered something else, which wasn't going to be available straight away. But in 6 months' time, that friend of mine who we were chatting about, who I've been friends with for 10 years, he himself had started up his own business, and that had started to kick off and was going well. And he was saying potentially in 6 months' time, you could fly up to where I live and up on the Sunshine Coast, and we can like essentially bring you on board as someone who's part of the company, and you could go from there. And so I had that option. The reason why I was considering that is because, hey, it's a startup. It's like, I've seen a bunch of these different things and they make decent money, which could put me one step closer to owning the supercar.
Yeah. And you grow with the company as well.
You grow with the company as well. And then the third option was just to stay in the current role I was in and maybe take like the next step up the corporate ladder. But something inside me still wasn't set on any of those. And that's why I came to you and asked you the question. I sat you down, I was like, hey, here are my three options. What do I take? And this may not have been exactly how you said it, but how it came across to me was if you're sitting here asking me the question, you already know that none of those options are what you want to take. That's the way it came across. And then you counter offered and said, well, there's this idea which we've spoken about. And there's this idea we've spoken about which we haven't done yet. This is the perfect time to start it up. For Mize.
Exactly. And I remember that conversation so damn well.
Exactly. And that was, so for context, 2018, September,
Yeah.
Supercars of Australia was written down.
Yes.
2019, September. Famais was written down.
Yes.
September 2020, we're finally sitting there, and eventually went, like, this is the move.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, you and I describe it quite a lot, and a lot of times we won't make a decision on something unless we are yes about it.
Exactly. And this is one of those moments. This is one of those moments where I just knew it was the right move, because one, I shy away from recommending sort of like someone's career path. I feel like it has a lot to do with your self-awareness, right? And I'm not in charge of your own self-awareness. You get what I mean?
Precisely.
So when you brought that question to me, I was a bit scared, because I mean, I thought of it like, hey, these are big decisions. Like,
Yeah.
you're talking about moving states, right? And complete change of what you're currently doing, and basically staying away where you're at, right?
I was considering this far more than I even considered leaving uni. I was in uni for 3 weeks, got offered to work full time. I went, all right, let's do it. And just immediately left uni.
Oh, damn.
And haven't regretted that since. But that's precisely, I was freaking out more about this because I knew whatever I decided on,
It would take commitment.
it was going to be the determining factor for... I'm going to go as far as to say it was going to be the determining factor of whether I actually got to own a supercar in the future or not.
Ooh, and that's very near and dear to your heart.
Just deep down, I knew that was the case. That's why I was freaking out about the decision so much. And
Yeah.
that's why I brought it up to you. And like I said, the moment you brought up the Famais thing, see, the first time we spoke about it, we got excited, but I wasn't yes about it.
Yeah, yeah. Now this is the moment. And I just knew it was the right call, right? Because normally I would say, hey, like, reflect on this, like, look at what you've done before, blah blah. I remember I said this, like, and one of our mentors repeatedly says this, and this was like, you get to a point in your life, right, where you've done some things over and over again, and those things then become your specific knowledge, right? So it's your job. It goes up to like 21, 22. You can't change your specific knowledge after that. It's things that you've always, you've always gravitated towards, when you're younger up until in your 20s. So I just still asked you, like, I remember we were sitting at the back of the car, and I was like, what is something that has repeatedly come up in your life over and over again up until this point? Because that's one thing that you cannot change, and it's always been with you. And you said it's cars, right? You've always wanted to work with something in the line of cars.
And that's where it goes back to the drag racing, man. It's
Exactly.
3 years old. It's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
We had that conversation at that table as we were eating those burgers, man. And as you were talking, I remembered the drag racing, the V8 Supercars, Formula One, the JDM meets, finding out about law of attraction, the supercars.
Yeah.
And then
Your car events.
My car events as well.
Exactly. Like,
And it all clicked, and I was like, and that's why in my head I was F word yes about it.
exactly. And I was like, you must. I feel like you're gonna thrive in something to do with cars. And I mean, the listeners must be wondering, like, where do I come in terms of cars, right? So let's actually start from the beginning, because my story was very, very different to yours, in the sense of you actually saw these cars, and you're actually in the midst of them from a very, very early age, right?
Absolutely.
You could see them, you could hear them, you could experience them, you could go on drag races, the whole lot, right? But for me, it was very, very different. Now, where I come from, I come from Kenya, right? Nairobi, nice city, born and raised there, right? Now in Kenya, you don't see many of these supercars, right? In fact, you see none at all. My whole period in Kenya, I feel like I didn't see even one supercar, Like, that's how rare they are. It's very, very rare. So it's almost like seeing a unicorn, So I remember I was 13, and I think this quick little breakdown is on the Famai's website. But I was 13, and we had this computer. It had these wallpapers, and I remember there was that Skyline GTR. I know you and JDM's in your story behind that. But this one, imagine you've never seen any interesting car before, but you have this wallpaper, and it looks like it's coming alive from the screen. And it was featured in Too Fast, Too Furious, right? So I went crazy over this thing, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is the car, right? You could see the intercooler. It's just like, oh, it is just sick, right? With the blue decals, everything. Now, I started drawing these. So I was very heavy into art. And I was drawing the car. I remember I drew it on this big piece of paper, and I folded it up, and I was like, I'm going to take this to school. I took it to school, and I showed the guys and stuff, and they all got super excited about it, and they were like, wow. Because I tried to make it as realistic as I could. They're like, wow, this looks so cool. And I remember actually ending up selling it by the time school was closed, right? So at the time, I didn't think anything of it, because like you wouldn't think like, oh, businessman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just think, oh, I just made some money off of that because somebody else really liked it, and you know, I wanted them to have it. So that happened, and this just kept happening. The passion for cars, like I just loved how they looked, how they sounded on TV, how it was almost like a sense of expression.
Yeah.
Right. Remember, my grandfather used to have all these calendars, and we used to cut out the pictures of the cars and paste them in like a little scrapbook. So he was kind of like the person who supported my love for cars.
Yeah.
Right. He was the guy who I could talk about cars, and he wouldn't say that, oh, you can never get that. You get what I mean? And then I remember, same thing with the Pagani. I never actually remembered this up until you mentioned that. But I remember in primary school, there was a kid with a magazine. I think it was like there was a bunny on it, but inside there was a Koenigsegg. I think it was a
CCX or
yeah, the CCX. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, wow, that's sick.
Yeah,
You get what I mean? So that was like hypercar territory. Then I was like, okay, there's a huge, there's a whole like realm of cars that I haven't even explored yet. Now all this is happening in the background. I don't know what to make of it, but it all becomes very real when I moved to South Africa. Right, so I was very, very fortunate. The company that my dad was working for, basically gave him a promotion, and we moved to South Africa. Now South Africa was kind of like starting a new life, starting afresh. And I remember I was thinking of this, talking about it with my brother and being like, wow, we're going to see all these cars when we get there. This is a place where he loves Bugatti. So he was like, we're actually going to see a Bugatti, right? And we're going to see a Ferrari. It was like the doors were opening, right? Now, I remember we got to South Africa, and we were driving from the airport to our apartment, and we could just see showroom after showroom, because other friends that were there before, they could tell us like, whoa, you're going to see so many showrooms, and it's going to be the craziest thing, right? I remember we slept, woke up in the morning, we're walking down to get breakfast, and this is like, I can remember it like clear as day. We're walking down at the set of lights, Audi R8, just sitting there. Like, this thing was majestic. It was right when it came out, it looked mean.
It would have been like Iron Man time when that first dropped in
exactly. And this is pearl white. It looked like something out of this world. It looked like a UFO. Right? It's almost like what the 720S looks like right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Or rather, the 765 LT. It just looks crazy.
It really did have that stance back then, actually.
Yeah, it did. Now it looks softened, but back then, oof, it was the one, right? And what did it for me was, it was people that looked like me, right? People of color that lived this life.
Yeah.
And I was like, that basically just showed me that this is possible. You know what I mean? It's like, the person looks exactly like me. They're living the life. They've got the car. They've got the nice jewelry. They've got the nice clothes. Like, I can do this. You get what I mean? And that was the point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to do everything in my power to know exactly how these people are doing this. And this was at a very, very young age. This is what, 15, 16? Yeah, around about that. Yeah, maybe 14, 15, 16, around about that. And man, like from there onwards, it was just like almost like a snowball effect, right? So I was very privileged to be at an international school, right? So sponsored to be there. And these kids were all from, wealthy families. And that was the first time where I saw designer clothing. Like, keep in mind, my parents, I thank them so much for giving me all I needed, right? They set me up like perfectly, the perfect platform, the education, food, clothing, shelter, the basics, right? Everything I needed to succeed, the rest was up to me, right? So I'm coming in there with my some secondhand clothes and stuff, I'm almost like very excited to be in the midst of these guys, It's like I'm very glad to be in this position. And I see all this wealth around me and all this abundance, and these kids just think different. You get what I mean? It's a different sort of mindset. Keep in mind, I'm coming from Kenya, straight from Kenya, different mindset to people in like, in a much more developed country. So these kids, I'm becoming friends with them, right? And one day I remember this guy gets dropped off in like a Bentley or something, right? Some crazy car. And I remember he was like one of the richest kids in the school. And he comes and he pulls out this piece of paper. This is early morning, right? Comes and pulls out this piece of paper. He's like, yo guys, I put money in this bank. I think it was like a stock brokerage account. I put money here and this is how much I got back. And that concept of you have this money, you put it somewhere, and you did something creative with it, right? And then eventually you end up withdrawing more than you put in. That concept just blew my mind, right? That arbitrage concept just blew my mind. The financial markets, I was just like, wow, I need to be involved. Right, so I went home and did some Googling. Same way you Googled like how to become a
race car driver.
Yeah, I was like, hey, put money in bank and get more than you put in. Right? Something along those lines.
Stonks.
Exactly, stonks. And all these things come out. And I'm like, yo, like I see stocks, I see options, I see futures, stock trading, all this stuff, Forex. And I just start going, diving head first. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to educate myself on this. And I remember I was printing books online, trying to learn this thing. And I started like, playing around in the stock market at a very, very young age, right? I think I still have the screenshots from the platform that I was using, right? And I was like, I was getting a hang of it. And I was like, this is the point where I'm almost like a master of my own fortune, right? I can put a little bit of money in and actually get more than I put in. Same way that kid did it. And what really did it for me was this child had that mindset purely because the circle, right? The family, the generational wealth, they always had that, passing it on mentality where we need to empower the kids so that the kids can build something for themselves.
Yeah.
You have those kids, I mean, some people, there are many wealthy families out there, but there are kids who, they understand that they're wealthy and they want to build something of their own, right?
That's like that friend I spoke about.
Exactly.
Like
right?
Same thing, his parents were well off, but rather than just going, I want to inherit that money and whatever, move on, he set the goal of not just achieving that, but building on top of it, which is very similar to what Dr. Shimanto did himself.
Oh yeah, 100%. So those kids who are not like, they're not settling for it. You know what I mean? They're not almost like being too entitled, and they want to, almost like make something of their own. This was one of them, right? And he's the one that almost like, I owe a lot to that conversation, because if that hadn't happened, like, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe it would have ended up somewhere else, but who knows? Back then I wanted to become a pilot, right? So aviation and motorsport, those are two things that are very, very close to me. So maybe someday I own a trailer full of, we're going to track the trailer full of supercars, and we have a hangar with some planes. So
funny. Oh, geez. Yo, I actually completely forgot about this until now.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to have like a weirdly crazy obsession with planes as well.
Seriously?
Yeah, man. I actually forgot about this until now that you've mentioned it. There was a long period of time, I don't know when it ended, but probably around the age of 5, where every single birthday I had, all I wanted to do was to go to the airport and watch planes take off and land.
Oh my goodness.
That's all I wanted to do.
Oh my, now that you say that, every single time my dad would need to be picked up from the airport, I would cry, right, to my mom that please take me to the airport. It was like the best thing to do for me, right? Even this was, remember, when we moved to South Africa, that was the first time I was ever in a plane. Right, I always just wanted to go to the airport to watch the planes, and I would always look up when a plane would pass, right, just to see, like, try and do plane spotting, like, oh, that's a Boeing, or that's an Airbus A380 or something, or that's Etihad, or like that's Emirates, because I wanted to fly for Emirates. So yeah, shit, like we had the same sort of. That's wild.
Because that's what I mean. It was such a, although at that point in time it was the biggest thing to me. I was at that age where it wasn't really what I remembered too well. But then I found one of the old planes, because each year my grandparents would get me a figure of a particular Qantas aeroplane.
Yes.
And so yeah, like my memory of it wasn't too great. But then I then found this particular model plane, and it all clicked back with me. And I still remember exactly where the shop was where I bought the plane and things. And there was a point in time in 2017 I worked at the airport, and
Whoa.
because I hadn't been to the airport that much since then, I remember walking past this particular section, and it was like just this flashback of, like, I remember being a young kid walking past this shop, and like now it's like a news agency or something. It's near where the McDonald's is at the domestic airport at Sydney.
Ah, okay.
But there's a like when you're walking, if Macca's is on your right or McDonald's is on your right, when you're walking towards one of the terminals or whatever you would call it, to the left they had a news agency, and at the time they had model airplanes, and that's where I got it from. I remember it very well. But yeah, I loved airplanes.
Nice.
It's weird, like I just kind of dropped off at a particular point. I think I then just was like, cars are cooler. But
yeah, I always thought they went hand in hand because, like, I mean, I wanted to be the sort of like perception of being a pilot, especially in Kenya, right, was if you become a pilot, you'd be super rich. You'd have like nice sunglasses. You'd have the nice captain's suit, and you'd have like a nice sports car, right? And you'd be flying these planes. You get what I mean? But I owe this a lot to my dad, because my dad almost like crushed that dream, right? But it was, now I think back at it, and I was like, it was for the better, because if he hadn't crushed that, I wouldn't have been as interested in the financial markets where I later found myself, in finance. If it wasn't for that sort of like switch in mindset, he was like, once you get to, I mean, pilots are very, very important to us, right? Very, very important. I love their job, but my dad kind of understood where I wanted to be in life, right? And he understood that what I wanted to build wouldn't be able to be, properly, like fully realized if I became a pilot.
Yeah.
Right? He was like, okay, once you become a captain, then what? I remember that. I remember he said that you're just gonna be a glorified bus driver. Right?
It's brutal.
I know that might open a can of worms, right? But yeah, that's what he said. And I remember hearing that conversation, and it just shattered me, because remember, I had like that model, because my dad got me that sort of like, it was a Kenya Airways model aircraft. I remember when he was coming from a big trip, I drew that model aircraft. I drew it for him in a big canvas, and I was like, when he comes home, I'm gonna give this to him, right? Sadly, my mom is gonna probably listen to this and know that she didn't actually take me to the airport that day, and I cried my eyes out, man. I was so sad that I wasn't taken to the airport that day.
How come?
She did that because of traffic. Like, she had her own, like, because she's a professional beautician, so she had her own salon. So she just thought, because of the rush hour, there's no point leaving my dad at the airport waiting just to come and pick me up and then get stuck in traffic and then get to the airport. So as a kid, you don't really understand that. I was crying. I was like, no, I wanted to go to the airport, blah blah blah. But I understand now. But in South Africa, he basically said that, no, like, you don't want to get into this. And he forced it onto me, right? I was very stubborn. He forced it onto me. I was like, no, this is not gonna get you there, right? So then I changed. Finance is where I found myself later, because I remember then it changed into business and accounting. I was very good at sciences, right? I thought maybe, okay, I could do something in aeronautical engineering or something, but it later changed to business and accounting, and I was like, whoa, actually the people who control the money, the business, and actually understanding how a business is run, there's value in that. I enjoyed that. I somehow found it fun. You get what I mean? Yeah. And when this opportunity came up where I found the financial markets, boom, that's it. That's almost like lit the fire in me, right? So from there, I later moved to Nigeria, right? So South Africa is where I saw people differently. I saw people really express themselves and be very confident. I was very shy in my shell, right? I saw people expressing themselves. I was introduced to financial markets, so I carried that across. Nigeria continued that, right? So traded more seriously. I realized how important money was to me, because I wanted so many things, but I couldn't get it, right? And my parents loved them to bits, but they just wouldn't waste money on silly things that kids would want, right? I never had a PlayStation growing up. I never watched movies growing up. But thinking back at it, this is what molded me to who I am today. But I realized that if I wanted those new shoes, if I wanted those new clothes, if I wanted that, I needed to make my own money. Otherwise, that just wouldn't happen. You get what I mean? So that's what set me off at a very young age. So Nigeria kept doing that, lived there for 3 years. In the UK, continued that, right? In the UK, things turned around. So remember, throughout this whole period, South Africa is where I really came to know about cars. And remember, one of the neighbors had an Aston Martin DB9. Every single morning when this man went to work, he would thrash it because it was an uphill. You could just hear the exhaust and it just sounded incredible. Another one, Jaguar XKR.
Yeah, another one.
Yeah, those are really, really nice sounding. And an SLS AMG. Those are very nice. So
have you heard a race car one of those?
Nah.
Like the GT3?
No, I haven't. It's the sport.
One day.
One day.
Might even have to put one in the collection.
Oh yes. Now those SLS, this looks so beautiful. So in South Africa, I was surrounded by this, right? This was what made it very real to me, and seeing showrooms and all that. But something within, my circle was almost like, there's always like, yes, this is nice. It must be nice. It must be nice. There's always limiting beliefs upon limiting beliefs, right? But something within me was like, I deserve this. You get what I mean? Like I really want to own this one day. Nigeria, not so many supercars there, right? They're all almost like very secretive because I don't know. I just never saw that many of them. SUVs, yes, like the more premium SUVs, but not so many supercars. But I knew a couple of people that had like underground collections of those. So I wasn't really focusing on the cars. I was more focusing on the financial market, so my trading. So that's when I was trading stocks. And when I moved to the UK, things changed. So I joined the university fund. So UK, I went alone, and this is where I was free to see the world as it was, first world country and all that. Now, when I went to the UK, I joined the university fund, traded stocks there. And then I met a friend of mine. Now, this is the guy that actually took me under his wing and put me in the fund, right? When he put me in the fund, I remember on my birthday, right, in the UK, on my birthday, he gave me a book, right? And this book was about Forex trading, right? I had never seen Forex trading. Well, I did see Forex trading before because one of my teachers in Nigeria was trading Forex, right? He was coding some machine learning, sort of like algorithm for trading. Didn't know anything about it. It looked very confusing. The currency pairs, the whole lot. I was like, I'd rather stick to singular stocks. At least I understand the business, almost like the Warren Buffett way of investing. Now, when he gave me this book, I saw the cash flow potential of Forex, and I was like, wow, I need to start doing this, right? So started doing this. So I left the fund. Because I got the opportunity to move to to Australia, right? So my dad calls me up and he's like, yo, I got an opportunity to move to Australia. Do you want to come? I looked outside. I saw how miserable the weather was. Apologies to the UK, but I was like, yeah. I Googled how Sydney looks like and I was like, yeah, I'm moving. So that was it. That was a turning point. So I started trading Forex and stuff, and that later became my cash flow, opportunity where this was almost like my bread and butter, right? When I moved to Sydney, remember, up until this point, my mindset is fully geared to maximizing value, right? There's always value. In everything that I do, I need to add value, right? Now, when I moved to Australia, that was a big point in my life because one, I was on a different visa because I was coming with my family. That meant that I could actually work. And most importantly, I could actually start a serious business. So what I did was I started looking for opportunities. So I was like, you know what, I can work, let me look for a job, right? I need to do something in the financial markets, sort of like in the finance industry, right? So I started searching and I was like, everything needed experience. It needed 2 years experience, 1 year experience. And I was like, whoa, I don't have that. I don't have that. I was like, you know what? What if I started a business, right? Then I found this loophole where you can be an independent contractor, right? And, run your own show basically, right? So I did that and I reached out. So this was almost like I started a sales agency, right? So I did that and then reached out to this company. I saw the offer. They were looking for guys who were good at sales to sell their financial services products. So I considered that and I was like, you know what? I know this company from the UK. I'm going to approach them and see what they say. So I was like, I knew nothing about sales. Nothing. Absolutely zero. But I went in there confident and I was like, look, I will do whatever it takes right, to learn this skill set as long as, you put me in the right platform and you show me what to do, right? And I remember the guy at the interview was like, I just don't think you're cut out for this, right? He said that, and I was like, whoa, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like, that was my initial reaction. And I started almost like countering that and almost like coming back from that, right? And I feel like now looking back at it, like from the conversation I had with my father after it, since he's interviewed a lot, like a lot of people, he was like, that was mainly just a test, right? I thought I shit the bed. I thought I'm never getting this opportunity, right? Because remember, you're coming in as an independent person, right? This is different, right? So they've got many people to choose from. But I ended up getting the gig, right? So I ended up getting the gig. I had my first client, and they taught me everything that I needed to know, right? So this guy taught me everything. I was following these guys like top guns, like in sales around Australia. Got to experience all the different cities, right? And I was following them, learning so much, and that's when sales literally like it blew my mind. Where you could learn this skill, and you could apply it to every single human interaction that you had with anyone, right? It didn't matter whether it was getting your morning coffee, checking into your flight to get an upgrade, whatever. You could use sales, right? Not in a manipulative way, but in a way to express what you'd normally want to express, but you'd feel like you have a block. Why? Because of societal, norms. You get what I mean? Like, oh, you don't talk like that in public, sort of thing. You get it? So this kind of took me out of my shell. You get what I mean? And sales was, I knew the financial market side of things, but sales just unlocked a different layer to that. And it unlocked a different layer where I wanted to serve people. I wanted to interact with people and teach people what I know and share.
Yeah.
Right? That's something I didn't know I had until I actually took up this gig. So I started going around Australia up to a point where I was making quite a bit of money for my age, and eventually it developed to me starting to speak at these events. So that live seminars around Australia, and I was doing pretty well for myself. And I was like, you know what? This is what I love. This is what I love. I love sharing what I know to people, helping them, guiding them every step of the way. Now, when that happened, I actually left that client and I was like, you know what? Why don't I start my own thing? Right? Because there was so much demand. I mean, from people, even in South Africa, when I was posting like, screenshots of my sort of like my trading and stuff and showing my setup and all that, people were always asking me like, how did you get into it? How did you get into it? Please show me how, blah, blah, blah. And that later led to the education company, like AB Education, where I teach people how to trade the markets. But it's a very different sort of like approach where, for me, because it's maximizing value, the core of it, it's maximizing financial market opportunities so you can be empowered to do what you love.
Yeah.
Right? The money is one thing, but what you do with it is what truly matters and is what truly drives you, because that's your why. Right? And I didn't know that for certain up until Formais happened. Right? So the education company happened. I was running my trading fund and all that. And then within that, the Formais happened, but through AB Creations, right? Yeah. So I built AB Creations. I was like, you know what, this is gonna be my creative side. This is gonna be my vision for AB Creations. Was we're gonna have like art galleries. We're gonna have unknown artists, and we're gonna express that to the world, right? But I also wanted to have my own creative side expressed within AB Creations. And when Formais happened, I was like, what is it that I've always gravitated towards, never really nurtured, right? People never really supported that within my own circle, right? But I really love, right? And that was cars. And I was like, the reason why I'm working so hard and trying to make this money in the financial markets is that I can fund this lifestyle. I can fund, this fleet of cars. I don't have a dream car, I have a dream garage, right? I can fund this. So that way I can be empowered to do what I love, which is enjoy cars and share that with the world, right? So when Formais happened, when I designed Formais, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be reaching out to these people and finding out what they do, finding out their story and sharing it to the world. I was like, this is it. This is it. So my education company is literally tailored to achieve that, for other people. For some people, it's not gonna be cars, it's gonna be something else. You get what I mean? It's purely to be empowered to do what you love. And that's why when I see the car, I don't see the price tag or, the sort of like I'm infatuated by it. I see the hard work that went on behind it. you know, and how that person went through these trials and tribulations to empower themselves to be able to have that, you know, and enjoy that. So that's basically been the journey, you know. Australia is where it's at, and is where Formaz actually started. And then having designed that and then reached out to you, I just instantly felt that you had the right mindset, right? You had the right mindset, you had the right passion and drive to be able to partner up on this. And that's why when we had that conversation, I was like, it's a no-brainer. It's like, let's do this. So that's how it branched out, and now we're here.
What I love about that story
Uh-huh.
is the fact that it's so clear how different we are, but at the same time how clear it is that we're the same in so many ways as well.
Yeah.
It's the path that got us to where we are now is completely different, but at the end of the day, we have very, very similar goals, and so we're just going to go achieve them.
Exactly.
And that's the part where Formaz comes in with other people. Is not everyone grew up in Kenya, moved to a few different countries, and all of a sudden started up a media company, and then has a supercar type of thing.
Exactly.
You get people like Dr. Shimanto, where he's an orthodontist by trade, and other guests which we'll have in the future. There'll be some quirky stories in there.
No, 100%.
Very, very
That's what it's all
quirky
about,
stories.
capturing that, you know?
Yeah. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from mine, the main point of Formaz is I know that there is someone out there where, just like how your dad mentioned that thing to you, it basically crushed that dream of becoming a pilot. There's someone out there where they have a passion for something, and they're constantly getting told by their parents, peers, or whomever it is, go to school, get A's, go to uni, get a degree, go do this boring job, and you're supposed to get a supercar.
Exactly.
If that was the case, every single person who went to uni who got told the exact same thing would also be living their dream life.
100%.
But they're not.
No.
It's not me saying that going to uni is a bad thing per se. It's not that at all. It's purely that you yourself, deep down, will know what the right move is. And if what someone's passion is that they want to make money from, if that doesn't involve going to uni, that's okay. And if they don't feel comfortable ever saying that out loud to their parents at the moment, or to their peers or whomever that is, they can find comfort in Formaz, in you, Antony, and myself.
Yeah.
They can find comfort in us that they're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
And that they're just like us. They're aiming for this goal. That they will truly believe it, truly achieve it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I wish, you know, the young me, with all this happening around me, people saying that, oh, it must be nice, or it's not really for us. You know what I mean? Maybe we're not cut out for this, or maybe you need to. It's almost like you're being conditioned to think smaller. You get what I mean? To settle to where you belong. I wish that I had something like this, right, to show me that, hey, look, people have literally come from nothing and they've gotten there, and you can too. You get what I mean? Like, and that's the same thing. Like the kid, you know, the little William, right? Imagine having this where you can see these people who are living your dream, and you know they're telling you how you can actually get there. That's essentially what, you know, fueled for my. So it's like, hey, we need to first of all have these conversations, learn ourselves, right, and share that to the world. Exactly. You know, and express that to other people from their eyes, you know, to ours.
Exactly. Like you don't go ask an NBA player how to score a try in rugby or something. Like
exactly.
If you want to achieve something, go ask someone who's already done it.
Yeah.
But don't just go ask one person. Go ask multiple people and find out the general theme of what is common between them all.
Exactly.
Because what worked for one person isn't going to work for the other person.
Yeah. It's going to be totally different.
Like, a prime example would be Dr. Shimanto. I don't plan to ever become an orthodontist. I have no interest in ever doing that.
Yeah.
But there were key things, key ideas that had been brought up throughout that one I'd already introduced into my life,
yes,
and the new ones which I'm going to be introducing.
Yes.
And that is what Formaz is all about.
Yeah.
It's about conditioning your brain to go, these are habits of successful people,
Yes.
and these are habits I'm going to introduce to my own life.
No, 100%. It's all about, like, the journey itself, right? Obviously, the journey is going to be variable, right? But that's where the gold is.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? The vehicle that the people used, whether it's a set career where it requires a lot of expertise and a lot of training, or whether it's something that they came up with, an invention, we're going to find those. You know what I mean? Whatever the vehicle, it's a journey where the gold is, right?
Exactly.
The gold is is in the journey itself. So it's all about finding those key things, those key elements that you and I and people out there can take and borrow from all these different owners and apply precisely to what you're doing, on your current path. Because for me, like, it was discovering that purpose, right? That I want to maximize financial market opportunities, to be empowered to do what I love, right? And then incorporating all these different elements, picking up books, picking up, sort of like key learnings from, traits of the greats, almost, and applying those throughout my journey to get me to eventually, where I want to be. So yeah, that's what Formize is all about. And I'm so, so glad that, we've created this platform where I think it's the first of its kind, right? Especially the first of its kind with this sort of passion behind it.
Absolutely.
That I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people out there, a lot of young kids, a lot of, young adults that are just pushing, to achieve their goals and to live the dream, the supercar dream or the exotic car dream.
Exactly.
And in the end, share the love for cars.
That's it.
So yeah,
That's why.
That's
Look,
essentially it.
That is, man.
Exactly.
There's one thing I do want to make very, very clear.
Uh-huh.
It's not that I don't like JDM cars anymore.
Uh-huh.
It's the culture, the current culture.
The culture,
behind it.
yeah.
I just want to make that abundantly clear, because someone will get on here, I know, and we'll just be like, JDM cars, JDM. It's like, it's not.
It's a
the
toxic,
cars I still think are cool. I
Yeah.
still love the look of the R34 GTR.
Yeah.
And the thing is, nowadays they're going for $500,000
Yeah, look
in
at
some
that.
cases, but
It's
the
a
culture behind it, and how someone does one thing is how they do everything.
Yes.
So it's that culture just from the car community and all the other areas of their life of what those people are doing. It's just not something I at all relate to anymore.
Yeah.
It's something which I just found it quite negative, and so for that reason, it's I think there may even be potentially some people who've heard this story today and from there who may at the start of this conversation have gone, yeah, I really love JDM cars and this and that. My dream car, but I started watching this video because my dream car was an R34 GTR.
Exactly.
Only to get to the end and go, wait a second, no, it isn't. I've just been conditioned to think that is.
Maybe I'm settling. It's a tough questions that you need to ask. And it's a tough questions that will get answered once you hear the stories of people that started from, rock bottom, right? Crushed all their limiting beliefs, right? Moving up, and eventually achieved that. We want to hear the stories from all these owners because, for an owner like that to come out here and express that, they more than likely, right, were once that kid. They were once that person who's going to tune into Formize and be like, whoa, that person has a Pista, for example, or a 720S. How did they get there? They were once that kid, and they want to express that, and it's all about demystifying, all those limiting beliefs, basically reimagining what is possible, right? And helping people achieve their dreams, basically.
Exactly.
I really hope, together, we're going to be able to achieve just that.
Man, got the goosebumps again.
That's that.
That's it, bro.
Exactly, man.
All good, man.
Yeah.